Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, the show about all things nerdy. We discuss nerd news, movies, TV shows, games, comics, and oh, so much more. I'm Brian.
I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Chad.
Oh, good grief. Brace yourselves, folks, because we're about to get nerdy. All right, this week's guest is a husband, father, pastor who loves art and comics. He is the creator of Hybrids, the Sons of God, which is on Indiegogo right now. He's also worked in comics at many different levels and often advocates for new creators in the business. He is currently working with Arrow Comics to bring his new issue of Hybrids to life. And he also hosts a YouTube show, Take a Break. Ladies and gentlemen, we give you the fantastically talented Luke Stone.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'm gonna have to have you go around everywhere I go and just kind of do my.
I'll just be your
my
herald.
intro.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I feel like Jeremy could just be back there with like a mandolin.
Yeah.
Just your stoic face.
Yeah.
Do you play mandolin, Jeremy?
I have held a mandolin.
Okay. All right.
That is not the same thing.
That's a start, I guess.
I play guitar and I play ukulele, and from what I understand is it's like the guitar but upside down.
Yeah, it's the top 4 strings reversed. Yeah.
Nice. Chad, are you okay? Are you safe? You look like you're in a dungeon somewhere.
Well, I'm going to blink twice if I need your help because I'm currently in a hostage situation. No, I had to move, as I was telling you guys beforehand, I had to move downstairs because we had a new puppy. And so I figured not everyone wanted to hear my puppies squealing in the background looking for attention. So,
well, you look like you're on the set of Silence of the Lambs. You know, yeah. I miss your wall
lotion in the basket.
Yes.
Put the lotion in the basket.
Chianti. So yeah, I'm fine. I'm just down in my basement. That's all it is. In the corner of my basement. So
sure, where you keep the bodies.
Yes.
So Luke, welcome to the show, buddy. We're glad to have you here. And we want to first and foremost, not that this has ever happened before, but we would like to christen you and knight you as an honorary dingo once more, sir. This is an honor, much like being knighted by the Queen, I think.
Or better,
really, probably more important.
Yeah, probably better.
Because we're in America. Nobody cares about the Queen.
America.
Yeah.
Hey, we stopped caring about what the Queen thinks. 1776.
Long time ago, right? we had a whole war about it. So yeah, we don't care. So Luke, before we dive into your personal life, we would love to kind of ask you just a couple questions that we ask everybody that we have on the show. First one being, what kind of nerd are you?
Comics nerd and probably lesser known, a theology nerd, believe it or not.
Yes. I like expound upon that a little bit.
Well, I really get into apologetics and then kind of some of the weirder, the more strange things in scripture, and so I like to kind of dig out and like kind of study the theology and scripture, really know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm big apologetics nerd. So yeah.
Awesome. Who's your favorite apologist?
Well, I really can't pick a favorite, to be honest with you. But I'm right now I'm really liking a lot of stuff from a couple modern people who really don't consider themselves apologists, but they've kind of become that. So like John Cooper, from Skillet, he's kind of become kind of doing like that theology for dummies. And then Elisa Childers is really, she's got a podcast that talks a lot about apologetics and has different people in there. So I like watching a lot of their stuff and then I like going back to the old Puritan writers and reading that stuff. But not a lot of people find that as fascinating as I do. Yeah.
Well, maybe one day you and I can just have a show and talk about that kind of stuff because I'm a nerd as well.
I
when it comes
love
to
that
those
stuff.
things.
Yeah, I could talk about that for hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
For funsies, I read old sermons from John Wesley. So.
Ooh, look at you, man! Just nothing but excitement on a Saturday night.
I know, right?
What about movies? What are your top 5 movies?
My top 5 movies has got to be, all right, now you guys are going to laugh at this one, but Dumb and Dumber's up there at the top for me.
Yes.
I love that movie.
Yes.
Okay.
Office Space is up there. I really like Shawshank Redemption, The Lord of the Rings. I don't want to just pick a movie. I kind of want to put all of those together.
That's right, Jeremy. That's right. That's how you do it. Jeremy's mad because I'm the same way with Lord of the Rings. And every time Jeremy's like, you can't do that. They're 3 separate movies. I'm like, no.
Well, but I still count The Hobbit as part of that too. That whole franchise, I don't really feel like you can separate it. It's kind of like.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Look at that, Jeremy. A man of the Lord agrees with me. And you're wrong. How's it feel to be wrong?
It's in the Bible. No, I'm joking. It's not in the Bible.
This is my face.
Put your face all the time.
I know.
Yeah. And probably here's another movie that I think's really funny. And every time it comes on, I just have to stop and watch it. And that is Couples Retreat.
Is that with Adam Sandler?
No. That's got Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I remember
they go off to this but it's like they think it's just for funsies, and it's it's couples skill building and stuff. So it's pretty funny. My wife and I love watching that movie. We get a good laugh out of it. So yeah,
that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah. You were thinking I was going to say like a lot of nerdy things, didn't you? Because
I'm supposed to be talking
nerdy to you.
Not necessarily. I mean, everybody has their own little niches that they enjoy, no matter how much of a nerd they are. So really, honestly, we've heard a plethora of different movies, and some people have like crazy, like number 1 would be like Lord of the Rings, and then number 2 would be Dumb and Dumber, like all across the board. So I love it.
Yeah, I love.
I was going to say you get points for Lord of the Rings, and then the other ones are very original to you because we've not. Those haven't been on anyone's list yet, so that's awesome. So, as a comic creator, who are some of the comic creators that you look up to or are influenced by, and who are your top 5 creators of all time, whether artist or writer? Well,
I think when it comes to art, I have to put Jack Kirby up there. He inspired me more than I even realized until probably recently. Mm-hmm. In that group, obviously Mike Zeck has to be there because the first comic book I ever picked up was the Secret Wars number 4. I think it was number 4. The one with Hulk holding up all the, beneath a billion tons.
Yeah.
And
Hulk that's the cover of your, or that's been a thumbnail on your show. Right?
Yeah. I kind of keep it up there. It's the inspiration for why I do comics.
Yeah.
And then obviously Jim Shooter was a big part of that. So even though people don't like him, I have to say that he's been an inspiration, especially with writing. Mm-hmm. That's 3. George Perez. Obviously, I think artists tend to inspire me more. And then I'm going to go ahead and say Todd McFarlane. And it not for the reason why most people would say Todd McFarlane, not for his art and not necessarily for his writing, but for his innovation and understanding that building the comics thing goes beyond just a book, like the whole bringing in those other aspects of it and making it more than just a comic that comes out every month. So
I'm gonna hijack this interview for a second and ask you a couple follow-up questions.
Sure.
You're welcome, Brian.
Chad's gonna mark off on his personal.
He's cowboy in this thing.
Yeah, I've got my own interview questions for you. So, what do you look for in a comic writer and a comic artist? How would you? What makes them so good?
For me, compelling storylines. I don't really like writers that all they want to do is deconstruct. I like it when people kind of build things and kind of they start to develop those characters. People that are really good with character development, not in the comics world, but in the in the regular like novel world would be Stephen King of all people. I feel like he's a tremendous at being able to develop a character very quickly because he's going to kill him soon, right? So he has to develop, and you have to care about him pretty quickly. And so he does such a great job at that. And so I really like, so that's what I look for in a writer, if they can really develop a character and make those personalities compelling. As far as an artist goes, it's not really, art is so subjective, and I don't really gravitate towards one kind of art over the other. What I look for is their ability to tell the story through pictures. And does it complement the story? Do the sequentials make sense?
Yeah.
If I don't read the words, can I kind of tell what's happening? And so that's what I look for in art. Like I didn't used to, I'm kind of really becoming a fan of Mike Mignola.
Yes, welcome to the dark side.
And the thing is, I didn't like him when I was younger. I liked the really super rendered things, the life elves and Lord help us. But he was like the 90s those guys were kind of the 90s quintessential, the Jim Lees, and the Todd McFarlanes. That was kind of the stuff that I gravitated towards. And I didn't really look too much at Mike's work because it was real blocky blacks and it was, very stylized. And I just didn't really get into it because I was looking for a certain lot of thin hash marks, hash lines. And so, but, in recent years, I see the way he can pace a story and tell a story through sequentials. Just tremendous work. And so that's kind of what I look for.
I think he's probably, personally, he's my like Jack Kirby, honestly. Like I've looked up to him because I just fell in love with his style a long time ago. But you're absolutely right. I think he's probably of the modern era, probably the best at telling a story through the comic book medium that I've seen. Me personally, I feel that way. He's so good at just those. I think the thing that I've noticed most about his work is he knows how to make you pause and just dwell in a moment, whether it be a creepy moment or a sentimental one. He's just very, very good at pacing a book. Very good at it.
It's good. That's the only follow-up question I had. You may continue, Brian.
Oh, thank you, sir.
The cross-examination is finished.
Exactly. Yes, I take direction from you. Brian K. Morris. Chad begins his
Thank you, Brian K. Morris.
Brian, how you doing?
Oh man, absolutely.
I began it and ended it with one question.
Yeah, BKM. I don't know if you realize this or not, but Chad is showing us the interior. Earlier, you missed it. He showed us the interior of where he kills people and hides their bodies in the concrete.
And currently I'm a hostage. I'm in a hostage situation right now.
Sure you are. You're probably, you gross human being.
Hey, you know what? The other reason why I came down here was an act of humility, since my my actual background is so offensive to Brian. And all of its
actual background is my wonderful, amazing
in all
artwork.
of its glory. Yes.
Oh, stop it. So Luke, the reason that we're here, not Chad. Tell us your story, man. So you're a pastor as well. So,
I am.
So tell us kind of how you got to the place of being a pastor and then going into creating comics at the same time.
Yeah, well, I never thought that I was going to be a pastor. First and foremost, I'm kind of a big geek. This is my office, and you can see I've got a trooper back there, and I've got a lot of toys and comics all over the place and guitars and stuff. But I always wanted to do comics, and so that was kind of a primary thing for me. I wanted to be a comic artist. I never really thought I was going to be a writer. I really was expecting to. I was trying to draw, other people's IPs, these characters that I loved, the X-Men and Spider-Man and all that kind of stuff. But as I started to develop in that, I would go and I would show people, hey, look at this picture I drew, or look at this comic. And I would write a little story or something, and draw it, and people were like, oh, that's great, yeah, that's fine. And as a creative person, you want to express yourself and have people respond to your creation. And so I learned that if I pick up a guitar and I play a solo or sing a song, that people responded to that. And so that was something that I really gravitated towards because, I met my wife through playing guitar, and, and playing music and stuff. It just afforded a lot of opportunities. It's actually what brought me into some of the situations where I could further the comic thing. I would get in contact with different people that wanted to write comics or wanted to color or something like that. We would try to work together and make a comic. And I was just actually going through some of my older ones. And I'm like, oh, I forgot about that book. Let's hope no one ever goes to this box and finds that. Just some really bad attempts at making comics over the years. And what wound up happening was music brought me to Jacksonville, Florida, because they were looking for a music and youth pastor. And so youth had become a real passion for me to kind of pour into the lives of young people. And so that was kind of my primary focus. And because I was skilled in music, I was able to use that as an opportunity for a ministry career. So I'd gone to school for youth ministry and things like that, and wound up coming to Jacksonville because they were primarily looking for a worship guy, but they wanted someone to also do the youth because their previous guy had done that. I don't think they really even paid attention to my teaching the kids so much as my music. That's what they were kind of focusing on, because that's what most adults focus on. They're like, go take care of the kids, but can you play a chord and can you sing on key? And I think that was the focus, because you get a lot of people that come in and they don't do that. Surprisingly, they can't do that. And so we did that for several months until the lead pastor resigned. And so they needed someone to fill the pulpit. And so I just slid over and started teaching. And they didn't realize that I could preach. They're like, oh, things and you communicate well.
Yeah.
And so they wound up, they're supposed to be hunting for a new replacement. And I kept asking, it's like, so do you know who you're going to go for? Do you have anybody in mind? And they were like, well, yeah, we got somebody in mind. Turned out it was me. So I wound up becoming a lead pastor when the congregation voted for it. And, which was weird. I never thought that I would do that. So it's still even weird to this day when people's like, hey, pastor. It's one of those things that's really weird for me, because it's like I never really saw myself as that. I'm starting to like really lean into that a bit, because when God kind of puts that heart in there for you, you just kind of have to. Yeah. But at the same time, I just couldn't stop being who I am. And when I moved to Florida, finding a band was very difficult. There's not a lot of musicians that are out there playing the kind of music I like to play, and there's not a lot of venues for what I like to do. And so I was having real trouble finding a band when I moved. So I thought I would just start focusing on comics. And something happened in November of 2014, that really sparked me to do comics and do it seriously. One of my friends, Gary, his brother, worked for IDW, did this book called Skyward. And just, tremendous writer and artist. And we always kind of lived vicariously through the idea that, hey, one of us in our group made it into comics. We all kind of wanted to do that, but he really buckled down and developed the skills to do it. Yeah. And he wound up getting sick in November. He got some con crud, wound up getting sick, and he passed away. He was just a few years older than I was at the time. And it really shook me. And I was like, if I really want to do comics, and I feel like that's what I want to do, I should really buckle down and start to do it. And so in November of 2014, I decided that I was going to either find a writer to work with, develop some story ideas that I had. And that's what I did. I started focusing on doing comics as kind of the side gig with ministry, because sometimes with ministry, you need that release, number one, just for creativity and just for fun. Yeah. And then I wanted to do it as a side hustle to be able to make a little extra money if I could. Yeah. It's starting to do that.
I think it's really cool, because like a lot of times, you see pastors that, they'll write theological books and things like that. And you're doing somewhat that same type of thing, but you're just doing it in comics instead. And I dig that. I think that's super cool. Well, like, I think we need more pastors to also be comic creators.
Even through my seminary courses, I always said, if I ever write a book, it's going to be a pamphlet or a coloring book.
There you go.
Turns out comics are kind of both.
Yeah, just a more sophisticated version, depending on who's telling the story.
So it is kind of funny that I do use some of my theological knowledge to inspire the fiction that I write, more like a Tolkien or or Lewis kind of writing where it's allegorical, but not to compare myself to those two greats, but that's what that's the field I'm shooting towards. So
right, yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I think it's weird because I've used that comparison before as well, and it's like a weird thing to do, like just like Christians who are apologetically driven, who are working that into the stories that they tell, but they primarily sit in fiction, and that those two are like the best, they are the pinnacle of what that is. So it's just, if all us who like find ourselves trying to imitate that that mission, I guess, is
clamoring towards it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes. Someone asked me the other day, they said, can things be inspired by God, but yet not be like a spiritual text or something like that? And I said, I don't know exactly. But maybe. I mean, and I took the example of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Tolkien with Lord of the Rings. And I said, those stories have, they have surpassed generations and cultures in race and gender and all of those things. And people love those stories. Yeah. And they teach some pretty profound truths about God's love and about humanity. Yeah. And I think that if anything can be divinely inspired and not be scripture, it would be some of those texts.
For sure.
So, but that's how I answered that one.
All right. Cool, man.
That's cool. Yeah. I've always felt the same way about inspiration and art and things like that. I feel like that drive for the aesthetic is something that helps us see like the beauty in nature, that like general revelation and things like that. So
yeah, I mean, look at a song like Amazing Grace. Is that not divinely inspired? I mean, most people to this day, whether they have any kind of religious background or affiliation, can sing at least the first verse of Amazing Grace. Yeah. And I've heard many stories where people are, where they've been in a rough moment and they've heard that song and a song spoke to them in such a way that it brought them back from the edge of suicide. It brought them back from the edge of depression, and those kind of things. And so, yeah, I think multiple things can be divinely inspired to different degrees, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a religious text. So
yeah, well, I think I completely agree. There's a guy, and actually he has been in the churches here in Louisville, and he wrote a book. Is Mike Cosper is his name, and he wrote a book. Essentially, it's called The Stories We Tell, and it is just essentially saying every story that we tell, every song that we sing, everything that we gravitate towards, at least on some level, connects with us in our design, and that's we are storytelling creatures. So to tell a story is in some way a remembrance and an echo of a divine imprint that is on all of us. Yeah. So you find even in like some of the gnarliest horror movies, you'll find elements of story that you can relate to on a spiritual level.
Well, that's the very definition of testimony, isn't it? To tell your experience, to testify to what you know, and I think if we are true to that in story, and whether it be through song or funny books, if you're true to telling that story and your experience, you're able to connect with individuals, and then whatever your motive is, I think comes out through that. If your motive is to inspire, then you will inspire. If your motive is to educate, then hopefully you will educate. And if your motive is to tear down, we see that happen too.
Right.
So I feel like that comics, art, music, all of those things are subjective, but they're also a very powerful medium for communication. And so as a pastor who draws a funny book, sometimes sometimes I think that might be the best way I could spend my time.
I concur. Pops Van Zant said the Amazing Grace song was written by a redeemed slave owner, if my memory serves. I think that's correct. There was a movie that they actually did. Did you see that, Luke? About the song? about the
I
guy
don't
who
know.
wrote it, and apparently it's actually it's very good from what I've heard. So I can't remember actually, Pops, if that's true or
Yeah,
not.
I know it
But
was
I think
something
it
like
is
that.
true.
Yeah,
it's something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
But I've
John
heard the
Newton.
movie's
John Newton,
fantastic.
I think, is the one that wrote
John
it.
Newton.
And
Is
he
it?
was, yeah, he was a slave owner. I'm not an expert on that, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But one thing I wanted to say, Luke, when I first became a Christian, I was introduced to Francis Schaeffer, and I don't know if you've read much of him, but he really emphasizes worldview when it comes to apologetics. And I found that to be really helpful, especially when it comes to story. And that's why I love comic book stories as well, because, and really any story for that matter, because it breaks down that barrier that you have with maybe someone that you disagree with, or someone that doesn't come from your perspective, or is not a Christian, or a different religion, whatever it is. Stories are kind of that neutral ground that everyone can engage in without the threat of feeling confronted by someone. It's more of something that you can engage with, and whether you agree or disagree with. I think we all love story for that reason. It's something we can all identify with. So
Yeah, there's no accident why Jesus spoke in parables. He also, there's no accident why he chose the Jewish people, because they're a storytelling people like that. That's kind of their thing. It has been their thing. They tell stories. And so stories are important. And you're absolutely right. The worldview makes such a difference. You can tell me about the problems with race relations in the United States. But if you tell me in story, and I get to see the world through someone else's eyes, I get to live in their brain for a minute. I'm more apt to be able to understand that than if you just try to tell me, all the things that are wrong, because I may not see those things that are wrong from my worldview, my perspective. And so that's why I think if storytelling is especially important that way too, to share your worldview.
Yeah, and worldview is really helpful because you can exactly what you said. You can understand where someone's coming from that you disagree with, or maybe you're coming from a different perspective. You can start to see, well, that they believe these foundational things. Okay, well, that makes sense why they're coming to these conclusions, whether I agree with them or not. Mm-hmm. It just helps, to see the connection there. So, yeah, it's awesome. Jeremy, is it your turn or is it mine? I didn't know if you asked your question.
Jeremy's.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Pop says, Luke, one of the pastors from my mom's church is a Madness member who is an author, Previn Huditz. I probably butchered that. I'm sorry, Pops. Some great fantasy novels.
Nice.
And I did I did look it up. It's right. The guy who wrote Amazing Grace, John Newton, was involved in slave trade.
Yeah.
So, but was then later redeemed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's been the most difficult part of balancing ministry and creating comics?
It always comes down to time. I think that's the hardest thing. Most people's like, is it hard to balance? I think, from my perspective, I've always been one that's kind of gravitated towards people that maybe didn't have faith. So spending time with people that maybe think differently or believe differently than I do is not hard for me, where it would be for some other people, because I've had family that didn't believe, friends that didn't believe. So that's not the most difficult. The most difficult part is balancing the time, because ministry has this way of being one of those kind of jobs that says, well, for a Christian, God first, family, and then everything else. And so that would put everything else as like work and hobby and play. And so, but when what you do for work is the Lord's work, you have a tendency to kind of lean in like, oh, well, I should do that more. And then you wind up something suffers from that. And it's usually family. And so when you add in something like trying to produce a comic book on a regular basis, we're doing an issue right now. We're trying to do an issue every month and a half, trying to put that out. And soon through Arrow Comics, we'll be releasing, starting with issue 1 every month. And so for 12 months straight, you're going to get starting from issue 1, new content,
That's awesome, by the way. Like that hustle is insane, sir. Well done.
Thank you.
Grief.
Yeah, but it does come down to time and time management, because I don't want to take time away from the important work of ministry to do comics, and I don't want to take time away from comics where I have an audience and I have influence with people and a chance to build relationships with people that can turn in to discipleship or even just planting seeds just by being a decent person around them. And I don't want to take time away from family. I don't want either one of those things to take time away from family. So balance of time is always the most complicated thing to deal with.
I think if you're trying to, do more than one profession, really, if you're in just one profession, time management, I think, is the greatest enemy of creators in general, anybody in general, really, but creators especially, because if you actually do have a family and friends that you care about and you want to, really pour into, it's tough. It's really
and then
tough.
when Xbox comes in and Overwatch has a new skin that you've got to get, I mean, it's just.
It's weird because I'm slowly starting to just detach from all that stuff, which is strange for me because I never thought I would experience that. Like I'm a huge Castlevania fan, and the new season dropped last week, and I was like, I had it on the calendar. I was like, it's a countdown. I'm ready. And then I found myself, spending time with my wife, hanging out with some friends, and working on my comic, and I still haven't watched that thing. So it's interesting that normally before 2 years ago I'd have been like, nope, I'm taking the day off, I'm doing this. And
my son's 11, so I will put him on, that will be his task. I'm like, you got to get me the new skin. Daddy's busy. I'm making a comic.
There you go. Yeah, man.
Or like, hey, I'm prepping for Sunday. You got to get me the new skin. So yeah.
Doing the Lord's work in more than one way, sir. There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, help Dad out.
Yeah.
He loves those tasks.
I bet he does.
It's like, Dad told me I have to get it, so I'm gonna get it. So he takes a whole day and plays a game.
He's like, I'm doing a mission from Dad.
Yeah.
Play video games. This is
Mom
a good
doesn't argue with that.
I've always had a hard time with video games because I have such an addictive personality.
Oh, me too.
That I get it, and then 7 weeks later,
right?
I've pushed off everything in my life for 7 weeks so that I could get to this level on this game. And
there were 2 games that destroyed my productivity. The first one was Kingdom Come. And then the other one was The Witcher 3.
Oh, I watched playthroughs of Witcher 3 because it's just such a good story.
It is. I mean, I was
amazing.
Hooked. And then I was like, I got to play it again and try other options, and I mean, we're talking, I probably spent 150 hours on that game before I was like,
what have I done with my life?
Yeah.
But I'll do that with TV shows as well. Like I'll find a show, I'll watch that first episode, and it's like, where's this been all my life?
Yeah.
And then
Jeremy's like, life is complete now.
Blink, and it's like morning time. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just get to work then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No sleep for me.
Yeah, there are a few shows like that have done that to me. Oddly enough, I've tried that Jupiter's Legacy, and it did not grab me like I thought it was going to. I was like, I'm good.
I think it's not bad. It's just like, I'm like, I feel like I've seen this.
But I'd rather watch The Office.
Right. Yeah. It's good comfort food shows.
So, but a lot of those do that. I will say, and here's the other thing. People's like, well, watch a nice Christian show. I'll be honest with you. I can't stand half of the Christian shows. They're so lame and they're so cheesy and they're just so badly written and produced.
Preach, Pastor, preach.
People's like, that's why people's like, do you do a Christian? I do not do a Christian comic book. I do a comic book. It is written from my Christian worldview. Yeah. It has, it takes, like I've said, it's allegorical. There's some theological things in there, but I have to say there is one Christian show that I think is absolutely tremendous. Really well done. It's called The Chosen.
Yes.
If you haven't seen that, I'm like, wow, somebody, they figured out how to write and they figured out how to produce and tell a story. That's not one
Christian writer.
And Jesus is actually a person that you'd want to hang out with as opposed to all the other movies and shows where he's just like,
just like floating around.
I mean, even when he's busting James and John's chops over their attitudes, you're still like, man, I like this guy. You know, it's like it you know, yeah, they did such a good job of storytelling and character development. And it's like that's what a lot of Christian stuff is missing. You know, and there's some fiction involved in that. You know, they don't know everything about Peter's life, you know, to be like, hey, his wife was this, and you know, this is what they did, you know. But you can fill in the blanks from the stuff they do know. But it's really, really well done. And so I like what the writers on that are doing. But as far as some of the other stuff, I haven't really liked too much. I haven't liked too much at all.
My favorite is when you get on the ministry website pages and they specialize in Times New Roman font with the blue underline. It's my favorite. But yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, one thing for you, Luke, that I really respect is that both ministry and comics can become like a full-time plus job. So the fact that you're able to balance both of those, I have a huge respect for, and you know, will continue to watch what you do, because I've dabbled in both. Like I've done some ministry and I currently do comics as well. So it is a very difficult balance. So it's awesome to see that you're able to pull that off well. So
well, I don't know that I'm doing it well, but I'm doing it. So we can always be better at it. So but thankfully I have a very supportive system here at home. My wife, my kids are very supportive. I've got a message here my wife wrote for me that says I believe in you.
Nice.
That's so cool. Awesome. I have oh, good grief. Go ahead, Luke. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I came in the other day and it was just sticky note on my drawing tablet, and I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that gets, because really, I'm pushing really hard to turn comics into a monetize this work so that I cannot have to take a salary from the church. After COVID, we've really shrunk. It's a burden for the church to keep up with a salary for me. We were very smart with our leadership. They're tremendously gifted people, and they decided we had sold some property, and they decided to set salaries aside for 2 years. And so that runs out at the end of the year. So we are working very hard to try to find other means to be able to support the family. But in turn, I don't just want to support the family. I want to be able to pour back into the ministry because it really needs it right now. Given everything that's happened. So they understand my endeavors and the work that I'm trying to put in. And so it's really nice. And so even when they do have to sacrifice a little bit, I just try to make sure that the time I spend with them is quality.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So as an indie creator who is very active in the industry, where do you see the industry heading in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
I see people right now talking a lot about manga versus Western standard traditional comics. And I see people get upset, and they're like, well, they're not the same thing. Well, they're not, but you see how manga has something for everybody and how it's kind of universally accepted. And comics, honestly, the traditional, or mainstream comics in the United States doesn't have the support of the entire comic book fandom, let alone a large portion of the regular reading populace. So I think I see more indie stuff starting to become more popular. I keep hearing this where people are saying that if you don't see anything good from the mainstream, you're not looking. It's like, well, it's not my job to pay $5 a book to try to find one of them that's good. Yeah. In the last few months, when I've been to the store and I've grabbed a few books that there's just, it's just not the storytelling is not the quality that it was. But I'm starting to see that from indie comics that there is a increase in quality, and you're starting to see some of these mainstream people move over to the independent market. And so I think we're seeing a renaissance of sorts in comics. So we're seeing what I would call a new golden age of comics starting to emerge. And so in the next 5 years, I see a breakup of the big two. I think they're not going to be as prominent as they were before, especially with the whole moves to kind of really devastating to Diamond, to be honest. But I see the market opening up, and I see people trying to not necessarily copy the manga model that is in Japan, but I see people trying to emulate some of those things by making a more diverse catalog of comics, and hopefully at a more affordable price.
Yeah.
So I kind of see it going that way, and I hope that trend continues, to be honest.
Yeah, I think a lot of those creators from the big two are moving independent because and this is my guess, would be that a lot of people are just tired of gatekeepers, like telling them what to do and what not to do, and then seeing what actually gets done and the lack of quality that's out there, and you're just like, they're the ones calling the shots, and this is what we get. Like, so I'm just gonna go do my own thing since that's what people want.
Yeah.
And I think I haven't read the statistic, but somewhere it talked about how Kickstarter is like one of the biggest publishing platforms in the world right now because everyone's just going that route. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, between Kickstarter and Indiegogo, I mean, it's I've got a stack of books that in the last month, I mean, huge stack of books that I've purchased, all crowdfunded.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, me too. I've got, I don't know how many. Like, and honestly, like, I love going to the comic book store still, and every now and then, like, I just picked up what was it, Heroes Reborn from Marvel. That was the first Marvel book I picked up in, I don't know, 5 years, and it's because my primary, I look for indie books because I like variety. I don't just like, the same old stories that have been retold over and over again with the same exact characters. Or this character is now slightly different to fit whatever group this is that we're
I was
that
just
they're trying
thinking
to
that,
pander
yeah.
to. Like it's I want fresh stories that represent different people from the get-go.
Yeah,
and I think that's
characters
cool.
and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did like the Bat Who Laughs kind of thing that they did.
That was
pretty
every
good.
now and then, like the whole metal series I thought was very, very cool.
Yeah.
Every now and then they'll come out with some pretty original stuff, but
I wasn't all about House of X and Powers of X.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, "Oh, it's just the greatest thing," and I'm like, "It's not really the greatest thing."
Oh.
But maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy because they were kind of undoing some of the stuff that I fell in love with when I started getting into comics in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it just wasn't my thing.
Yeah, Chris, you don't really get better for me than Chris Claremont, X-Men. So like that's why when everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, this X-Men is the best thing ever," I'm like, I mean, it might be for the new folks, but for me, it's not.
Yeah, hopefully it pulls in brand new readers like me when I was a teenager. But Chris Claremont killed it for me, man. He knocked it out of the park.
Well, below we have a link to your current book on Indiegogo, Hybrids. So take a few minutes, tell us what it's all about.
Okay, well, Hybrids is a fun book that I've been working on for a number of years. It actually stemmed from a theological conversation I would have with one of my pastor mentors. We would talk about some of those more unusual aspects of Scripture. One of those being in Genesis chapter 6, it talks about these angels or the sons of God who came and he saw the daughters of men, and they thought, hey, and they started to procreate. Well, it turns out that it wasn't just the Christian Bible that mentions that. It's mentioned in actually a lot of religious texts, monotheist and even polytheist religious texts. We'll talk about those, and it's sprinkled throughout old literature, like some reference to this here or there. And the Book of Enoch talks about it fairly extensively.
Very extensively.
Yeah. And so we really kind of got into that when we started having conversations about how, those things really inspired the Greek gods, and how some of those stories mirror that. So, and then the connection with Atlantis, connections with pyramids, with UFOs, and just how all of those things kind of happen. So what I've done is I've taken folklore and legend and mythology, and we've mixed it up with all of those things that made me fall in love with a superhero team book. The fast-paced action, the character-driven plot lines, the interpersonal relationships, that the characters that you can find something that connects you with them, not based on necessarily any one defining factor, but they think the way I do, they feel the way I do, those kind of characters, something real and genuine about that. And so we try to take all of that stuff and we develop this storyline that really revolves around these creatures called the Nephilim, which were these angel human hybrids. And in this world, the Nephilim continued to have babies and continued to procreate with human beings. But the human side of the DNA just wound up taking over and watering down any kind of fantastic part of the DNA that would have been there from the angels. In this world now, something happens, and this kind of recessive trait that's been inside of human beings starts to wake up. And so instead of like a recessive trait that might give you red hair or blue eyes, here you get a recessive trait that gives you the ability to, I don't know, lift a building or teleport, shoot beams from your eyes, those kind of fun things, you know. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be fantastic.
Really, that would be really cool.
Especially since I have red hair and blue eyes. I'd take both those recessive traits.
Yeah. So you're like, you would be like God tier abilities, you know, like these God level abilities. And so people overnight, something happens, this trait, this recessive trait wakes up, and people start to develop these godlike abilities. But that would be a boring story if that's all we told. That's just the start of the story. That's the spark that gets the fire going, if you will.
Yeah.
As soon as these people start developing these fantastic powers, someone's coming around and abducting all of these newly powered individuals. And we follow a group of heroes that's trying to figure out what's going on, really kind of get to the bottom of it. And the reason why is because they have some very personal connections to that. And so we wind up following this. He's a failed reverend. It's what he is, who is not super in any way. Partners with a good friend of his who's in a wheelchair, also not powered in any way. But they're surrounded by these super powered individuals that they've helped rescue from abduction, and they are trying to break into the belly of the beast in order to rescue some people that they love dearly. And it turns out the belly of that beast just happens to be inside of a very well-guarded corporation called the Hybrid Engineering Corporation. And so we find out that this corporation is at the center of a human trafficking ring. And in issue 6, which is part 1 of the Killing Field, and issue 7, we learn that it's way more than what anyone would have thought about just human trafficking. That was the tip of the iceberg, that it goes well beyond that. So that's kind of the idea of what the story is. Obviously you have to read the book to learn more. I may have already said too much.
I think what you did, because I've read the first couple issues, and I think you really just kind of give it a little taste, and I'm really excited. I'm pumped. I was one of the first folks to back this current issue that you have going. I can't wait to see where the story goes, dude. You've really constructed an amazing. It's interesting that we started talking about X-Men as we were leading into this, because it does have similar qualities to that character building that you
really does. And I have shied away from mentioning that because I don't want to kind of soil anyone's idea of what the story is, but I think I should lean into that a bit, because it does have that 90, the Claremont style,
absolutely, it does.
X-Men team building kind of writing to it. This next issue, the one that I'm crowdfunding right now, has been the biggest issue yet. It's 36 pages, and it is chock full of action, and not just like gratuitous action, but it's plot driven action. So each fight leads to the next piece of the plot and the puzzle. All the while we're developing characters through those fights and through those interactions with one another. You really get this clash between protagonist and antagonist, and we really just dig in with it, which leads us into issue 8, which I start drawing tomorrow.
Wow.
So yeah, issue 8 we start the art on tomorrow. We'll hopefully finish that in about 3 weeks. And then I've just finished the script for issue 9. I have to go back and change one little thing, but it is ready to go. And that book is 31 pages of story. That's awesome. Where this one's 36 pages, 4 of those pages are backup. So it's 32 pages of story, and then some backup content that's in there. And then, so.
And then, the best part about it is you are doing, and you mentioned this prior to kind of leading into what you're working on. You have more more story, more pages, and it's very affordable.
Yeah, I really try to do that. This time around, we're going with free U.S. shipping.
That's
Yes. So
great.
we're doing discounted international shipping. So I figure if I'm going to eat the shipping for my U.S. folks, I'm going to at least discount it for my international backers, which we've got quite a few. I haven't seen as many of them come out this time around as we did for the last one, but I'm hoping that they tack on before the end of the campaign. We've still got a little less than 2 weeks to go. We are not going to do the Indiegogo thing where they re-up it where they extend it. We're not going to do that.
Right.
It's 28 days. We have a schedule to keep, so we can't extend this thing. We're only going to leave it in demand, a couple of the items in demand until we start to ship the book or books, because we've got 4 actual issues available, 4 different books available with this campaign.
Oh wow!
You can get part 1 and part 2 of the Killing Field through this one. We've got I mentioned that we're going with Arrow Comics.
Yeah.
And so in August, issue 1 is going to be out in retail stores. Starting with the direct market, and very excited about that. It's a big move for the comics, big move for indie comics in general, I think, and even more than that, it's great to have Arrow Comics back. I was just going through my box of books earlier, and I was like, "Hey, look, there's some more Arrow books." I was like, "Look what I found." From back in the day, like early '90s, they found these in the stores and was reading these books, and so we've got since that book is going to be re-released, we decided to go in and remaster it, and it's the Lucas cut or the Snyder cut kind of thing, the remaster thing.
Yeah.
So the stone cut is what we're calling this one.
Cool.
I have redone about 80 to 85% of the art, and so that has been updated. We have extended scenes. I put a couple of scenes back in that I originally cut, like little 1-page scenes. And then we added a couple of new scenes that had not been there previously to add a new nuance to the storytelling. And so we're pretty excited about that. So we've taken a 20-page book, we've moved it up to 24. It was originally supposed to be 24, so we've kind of put it back into that space. And so in order to kind of thank the people that have been a part of this process from the beginning with me, we're making 100 copies of that book, the fan edition, with a holofoil cover or a foil cover for it. And we're offering that book as well in this campaign where you can get, but there's only going to be 100 of them. So you can get that in this campaign as well. And then we're doing something that I've always wanted to do. I mean, we're talking 14-year-old Luke sitting in the comic book store, surrounded by comic books and role-playing manuals and miniatures and all that kind of stuff. I've always wanted a series that was several issues deep, that was like the X-Men, but had, all of this other cool stuff to it, and had a role-playing game.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So we have developed a role-playing game. I've been working with a guy named Nicholas Tockard, who is a tremendous guy. I think he might love the hybrid universe as much as I do. Maybe he might be pushing a little bit more. I'm not even sure. Yeah. But he has developed a role-playing game, and we're going to release this full manual at the end of the year. Not at the end of the year, but later this year, before Christmas. We want to make sure that the book gets out to people by Christmas is our hope. Well, in order to get people, kind of wetting their whistle, he's developed this thing called the quick play. And it is basically, we're talking about video games. It's that tutorial section at the beginning where you learn the controls. But yet there's still some cool story, and it drags you into it. Like The Witcher 3, when you're starting to learn the controls, and then you're like, oh, what do you mean? There's the bag with the bloody face in there. It's like all that kind of stuff. Awesome. He has developed this great game module that helps introduce you to the game world. And that book is available with this campaign as well. And I have one more thing. We're going to start painting these, but we're doing 20 of these custom action figures.
Oh, yes.
So I've got a little trash man there. We'll be hand painting these, and then these will be signed and numbered on the back of the package.
Very, very cool.
So you know exactly. And we're limiting that to 20. And so 10 of those are available through the completist package, the perk, and then 10 of those are add-ons. We have 12 left. So
oh wow, they're selling pretty well then.
Yeah, so they're selling pretty well.
That's awesome, man. That's cool. I know. And who's doing your figures?
A guy named Damien.
Oh, Damien Walbrin.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I know he's been.
It's funny. It's called Sons of Gods, and we got a guy named Damien working with us.
It's all for you,
It's
Damien. Awesome. Oh, Jeremy, let's bring up a couple comments really quick before we move to the next question. So Brian K. Morris says those X stories were the best thing going. Yeah, 30 years ago when they first came out. He would know because he's older than Moses. Yeah, before they were rehashed. And that's true. Yeah, they did kind of get caught up. And hey, what's up? What's up, Jody McPhee?
Jody McPhee.
How you doing, man?
Jody's a great guy.
Oh, he's a fantastic guy. He actually hosts his own show. I can't remember.
I've not been on.
Desco, the Small Desk Publisher.
Yeah.
I think it's on Sundays. I don't know. YouTube that. Jody, if you're still around, pop a link in there for us, man. So
that's all we have.
That's all we have. Yeah. All right, cool.
I've got the next question. So you're an advocate for indie comics, which we are that here at Dastardly Dingoes. Tell us about your YouTube show called Take a Break and how that encourages you and other indie creators.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of shows that people can go on to shill and to promote, and I think all of them are great. You know, every opportunity that people give a creator to maybe get in front of a new audience is important. And so, but one of the things that we wanted to do was create a short format or quicker kind of format show where we could basically just chill out. You know, so it's called Take a Break. We decided to do it on Tuesday nights at 8:00 because that's when my co-host was available, Justin Dutton. I hated doing it that time because I love catching never mind the Clever Title Pending.
Oh yeah,
Brian K. Morris, great friend of mine. But so we do that for an hour so I can catch the back half of the show. And one of the things that we really didn't set out thinking that we were going to feature comics. You know, we were just going to talk about what was going on and talk about our favorite comics and things like that, or, you know, just weird stuff and then be on with it. But like week 2, we had someone, hey, can I come on and talk about my book? And I'm like, absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to do was not just make it about that book, like about, hey, a commercial, which a lot of this show's not one of those that does that, but there are a lot of them where it's like, hey, you got 10 minutes to shill, or, you know, all we focus on is just the campaign and the books. I really feel that, you know, some people say, hey, my work speaks for itself. Well, I like to speak for my work. And I like people to get to know me because I feel like in the independent market, people are backing the creator as much as they are the project. You know, the creator as much as the creation. And so it's helpful for people to get to know who I am, because you're going to be more apt to want to give someone your hard-earned money if you like that person. You know, if you hate the person, you're not going to give them your money at all. And so I want people to get to know me, and I want people to get to know the other creators. And so we give them an opportunity to come on. We talk about it briefly, what they're doing. So there's that frame of reference for people, but then we get into who that person is. Like last night we had Marcel Dupree on, and Marcel Dupree has had a history. He had some embarrassing things happen in his career, and he's working to bounce back from that. And so we talked about it, and we're very honest with it. And he was very open with that. And it was nice to hear him and hear his perspective on those things, because he doesn't do a lot of shows. And so it was nice to do that. And then we just talk about some random stuff so the audience can get the perspective of that creator. But something new that we're starting to do is I'm reading an indie book a week. I've got a stack of books I haven't read.
Yeah.
So I'm making sure anything that's fulfilled and I can get it in my hands, I'm going to read the book, and then I'm going to talk about that book on the air.
There you go.
I read a book last week. I did not talk about it last night because it was terrible, and I refuse to go out there and dash someone's dreams.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to sit there and destroy them for 20 minutes. I just can't do that. I cannot do that. It's funny because like I too have a just stack of indie books that I have backed on different crowdfunding and on Comic Book Spectrum. The show with me, Brian K. Morris, and
Clyde Hall, Eric Hawkins, that we do every Thursday night, is just all about reviewing comics. And I was so glad that Brian asked me to be on the show, because like, yes, now I have a reason and a thing. Every week I have to go and I have to pick one of these books up and I have to read them, or I won't have anything to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. What's funny is I hardly ever submit. When I say hardly ever, I have not submitted hybrids for a review in years.
Yeah.
Because, and I don't know, it's weird. I feel like some reviewers feel like they have to find something wrong with the book.
Yeah.
They can't just enjoy it. I feel like some reviewers are they're so cynical because they've read so many bad books.
Yeah.
So I just stopped doing that. And I'm like, I don't, I had some people they were just being mean. I'm like, what's the point in saying the things that you're saying? That's not even. And I decided it wasn't helpful for me. It wasn't helpful for my readers or anybody else. It didn't help my mental health any at all. So I just stopped submitting books for review and started just listening to the people that were buying the books. What are they saying? What do they say on Twitter? What do they say on Facebook and those kind of things? And so I feel like that's an important aspect for advocating, is not just to do reviews, but to do an honest review. And that's why I said I'm not going to. If I didn't like the book, I'm not going to tear it down. I'm not going to destroy them. I'm going to move on to the next book, and we're going to, so if you know that you've sent me a book and in a few months you haven't seen,
Luke hated it. So, BKM says, Luke, when I receive my new hybrids, I'll do an honest on-air review. # promise.
And I'm fine with those. I like hearing like the honest on, those honest reviews, and people say, especially when they like it, tag me in those. If you hated it, it's my editor's fault. But I've been getting like some tremendous feedback lately, and so I'm maybe not as shy about having people actually review it now. I've had a couple people it's so weird. I have a hard time even saying it because it seems so seems so braggy. It's like, but somebody said, someone said that it was the best superhero team book in independent comics. And I was like, that's a big claim. Like can you maybe just move it down to the second best?
Right. Yeah.
Like that's a lot to live up to. If people are like, oh, I don't think it was the best, because it's all subjective. But but to hear that kind of feedback from somebody was humbling, and at the same time incredibly encouraging. To keep doing what I'm doing.
For sure. Well, what we'll do, we give you the absolute permission to, whenever somebody gives you a bad review, you can just blame Chad. That's what we do here, and it's worked out for us pretty well so far.
Anytime I forget something that my wife has asked me to do, I just tell her, Chad forgot.
It's my fault.
Why didn't you do the dishes today, Jeremy? Oh, Chad, dang it.
I think Chad did a really good review.
I don't know.
I think Chad did a really good review of a book that I do work on called Voodoo Nations. And your assessment of that was great. I was like, now that was a good review, because Travis knows that I'm not a big like review guy. I'm like, again, somebody they want to say something negative because negativity gets clicks, Exactly. So if you want to, people want to hear you tear someone down. They want to find out that they're, the other indie creator that they've been seeing on social media and selling their book, that they suck. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear that, hey, that book's really great and you should check it out as a fan. People are just, people are petty and small sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think we wrestle with that a little bit at first, because we kind of opened the door to, hey, if you have a book you want us to review, send it to us. And then we ran into, well, what do we do if we find a book that we don't like? Like, you can't just go on there and just trash it, like you're saying. And I don't mean trash it in a bad way, but like just tear it apart and just say, well, here's all the reason why I didn't like this book. But at the same time, you also don't want to give an insincere review where you're just like glowing about it, and it's basically free promotion for the person. So it's like, there's this difficult balance of, if you open that door, then whoever sends it to you, it's basically a free advertisement for them. So we got to the point where we decided we will just review the books that we actually like, that we found, and we want to promote. We believe in the creator, hence why you're on our show. And, things like that, where we have a little bit more control, and we're able to not just like tear someone down and not just build people up, but we're able to objectively say, hey, you should check out this book, and here are the reasons why.
Yeah.
And that's what I also found with myself is that, I have a very particular style that I like. And so doing a review has really helped me to maybe open my eyes to a style or a book that I wouldn't normally read. And so that's one benefit for me on doing reviews has been exposing myself to other books and just seeing what else is out there and taking more of an objective rather than, well, this book doesn't look like Jim Lee did it, I don't like it, because I'm very much influenced by the 90s myself. So anyways, having said all that, as an indie creator, what has been the biggest lesson you've learned from indie comics that would help others who are just starting out in the industry?
This one gets people ask this a lot.
Yeah.
And the answer always gets it always gets a mixed review, but I'll say this. Do not think of independent comics as a community. Think of it as an industry with people who are all trying to make it, all trying to build businesses. Some of those people are fine with doing, or not even just fine with, but they're actually encouraging other businesses to be successful. And some of those people out there are trying to exploit people to try to build up their own business. And be careful on identifying the difference between those two and who those are. And then just have fun. Stay out of the drama. Have fun. It's funny books, for crying out loud. We're living right now in the greatest time for independent comics I think that's ever existed outside of the golden age of comics, where everything was basically an independent comic and it was a free-for-all.
Yep.
People are finally looking towards the independent market for their entertainment. More people are buying independent comics now than have ever done it. And look at the money that's being made on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. I know 4 or 5 creators right now in the last couple of months who have broke 5 digits. Tremendous. And yeah, so just have some fun. Have some fun with it and try to leave the industry better than you found it.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's solid. That's a really good advice. I would say, I agree with you on the industry comment. And I think that just maybe to nuance it a little bit, that, I would say that you can find communities within the industry.
That is true. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that that's where really the mindset needs to be is don't, not everybody in indie comics is out to help you out. And
That's
out to we're not, some people aren't, what Brian K. Morris and a lot of us have, he coined the phrase, he didn't, but used the term rising tide.
He invented it.
Yeah, he invented it. He went back and he's so old that he actually told JFK the quote.
Yeah.
No,
he also wrote Amazing Grace.
He did.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will say this about Brian and the Rising Tide Network. That is a community inside of the industry.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that's inside of the quote unquote community that aren't like that. And there's other smaller pockets of community that you'll find. So it is possible to find it, but on the whole, don't just expect everyone that says that hey, I see that you're new and you're struggling, let me help you, that they really have your best interest in mind. I've seen too many creators.
Don't get in any strange vans.
Yeah. They look around the pool of the people that person that is trying to help you, and look at how many partners they have that are first-time partners, and find out what happened to their long-term partners. Start looking at that. If there's hey, they've been working with a lot of people, and a lot of those people they used to work with no longer work with them. Yeah,
that's a red flag, right there.
Probably a reason. Yeah,
absolutely.
One thing you said, Luke, that I really appreciate is when you said try to put something out, and I'm gonna misquote you even though you just said it. You're welcome. Where you said try to put something out there that helps the comic industry as a whole or something. I forget exactly how you said it, but the way you said it was really good because it combines both you have your personal ambition. You want to put out a good book. You want to be successful, but it's also very selfless because you're thinking more in terms of the bigger market and how you can make things better for others. And the thing that's really helped me as I've thought through that same concept, because you're right, it is an industry and everyone is a bit selfish. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, the way to fight that though is to sit there and think, okay, how can I make something that serves other people? Like, how can I make something that they will genuinely enjoy and will make their life better, And I think when you have that goal, then it kind of tears away all of the, well, I have this many followers and I've done this many books and I've sold this much stuff and all that kind of thing that I think all of us can have a tendency to fall into, that really at the end of the day is not really that important. What's more important is exactly what you said. How can you help the industry as a whole be more successful so other people can enjoy great work?
And I would add, you find those little pockets of communities within the industry, and that becomes a bit of your tribe. Is you start with these people, and you there's more room at the table, and you just build on to that, but don't just shoot for the stars and blindly, because you'll get burned pretty quickly. I think thankfully I haven't had that. I haven't experienced that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, well, I think a lot. I experienced it earlier in life in different ways, so I think I learned those lessons prior to coming into the comic book industry. Brian K. Morris says, "Good thoughts on industry community." Big amen on that. Yeah, you do a great job with cultivating a community within the industry, sir. Thank you, Brian, for sure.
Yeah, very, very, very appreciative of Brian. I've been able to partner with him and trying to publish some things and that kind of stuff. And through it, you find, we've been able to locate and identify the crabs and try to avoid the crab bucket as best we can. But I do know that I used to spend a lot of time thinking about other creators and what they were doing. Like that was my business model. As of late, I've spent a lot of time not caring about what other creators are doing and focusing on what I'm doing and what the fans or comic fans are wanting and how they're responding to what I'm doing. So that has been, I think that's another, if there's a secondary piece of advice you can give, is like, don't worry so much about what other creators are doing and what their success is. It's like building two different structures. One structure may be a small one-story bungalow, and the other might be a skyscraper. It takes much longer to complete the bungalow than it does to even lay the foundation for the skyscraper. So if you have big plans for a project, if you want long-term growth, you've got to think there's going to be a lot of development. And if you try to compare your work or what you're doing to somebody else's work, you're going to get discouraged. And if someone else tries to come along and compare their success to your success, well, they're just being a jerk. It's like, hey, look how successful I am compared to yours. And I'm seeing this happen right now where people are like, oh, well, my campaign made this much and my campaign made that much. Well, my campaign didn't charge this, or and it's all it is just one giant pissing match. And it's really, really disappointing to see that. Because we're all running our own race at the end of the day. And so just focus on you, focus on what your readers want, focus on building your audience. And when you do that, you don't have time for all that drama. Some of these people, they get in these Twitter wars. I have no idea how they have time to write or draw with all of the crap they get involved with.
Yeah, man, it's like think about all that time that you've wasted, and you could have just put that creative energy into actually producing something instead of coming up with the witty comeback.
Yeah.
And I think too, and I'll open this up to all three of you, is that to Luke's point, like that's the double-edged sword of social media too. For me, it's like social media is really helpful to promote your own thing, but the downside is very easy to start comparing yourself. Like you start seeing, oh, this creator's doing this and their campaign was this successful and their book is doing that kind of thing. And I found myself falling into that trap, like just seeing what other people are doing and how well they're doing and saying, well, what am I doing? That kind of thing. Whereas, really exactly what you're saying, Luke, like you have to focus more on, I'm promoting my story because I want it to serve others. I want it to do well for the industry and that kind of thing. It's very difficult to do. And I appreciate you having that perspective.
Even in my campaign that I'm running right now, it's on Indiegogo. If I look at some of my other friends who are making comics, and a side note, there is a competition within the industry, and it's okay to have competition and call these other creators your competitors, because friends can play darts and pool and golf and be competitive, and it helps you help each other grow through those friendly competitions. And so I believe there can be friendly competition within the comics industry. And when I look at some of my friends and the things that they're able to accomplish, my friend Michael Odin just, he broke like 14,000 or something on his campaign.
Awesome.
And I'm like, wow, that's great. They had, 150, 200 backers or whatever. I can't remember how many backers it was. It was a tremendous amount of, success for him. And I'm like, I look at, and if you compare that to my campaign, which is getting close to ending, we're not going to break 10K. That's not going to happen with the model that we're working. And we're all, but I'm also only running a 28-day campaign versus a 60-day campaign. If I were running a longer campaign, I was going to be shilling longer and all that kind of stuff, then we might be able to get closer to those kind of numbers. Yeah. But in order to, if it was a first book, then yeah, I'd run a 60-day campaign and hopefully we'd be able to hit those kind of numbers. But, we're into book 7 and we want book 8 and 9 out this year. And we want to complete book 12, all of completion, book 10, 11, 12 by the end of October. So we have a schedule. And so my model is to build an audience over time with that versus, trying to make, all those kind of things. So you got to look at your goal. You've got to look at, your campaign. You've got to look at your business model and what you're trying to accomplish. And is anybody else trying to do that right now? Yes or no? If they are, then you can start having those fun little competitions with people. And those should be fun. It's like, I bet I can get more backers this weekend than you, those kind of things. But I don't get mad when I see these guys make this kind of money. I said, we just had Marcel Dupree on last night. He made over 16,000 already. So that was a week left to go. 16K on an independent comic book, man. I mean,
that's crazy.
Those are tremendous numbers. There. I have seen so many people make these great. Matt Knowles just pulled in over $10,000 on his campaign. That's an independent comic book. It was him and one other person that worked on that comic book. It was,
and they have a vinyl and everything attached to it.
Yes,
it's super cool.
I just really, and I'm really proud of these people. And I'm like, I don't get upset when they're successful. I'm happy for them, and I think we all should be happy for them because that's great for independent comics in general. It means people are spending money on things other than Batman.
Right.
And those are really, really good things. And I remember there was a day when I was happy to, make $300. And so, right now the campaign we're sitting at, the goal is 3,200. I think we're 88% funded. I hope to break the 32K. I would 3,200. And I would like to hit 5K with this one so that we have some freedom to produce faster. But, I'm just happy with whatever we get. I'm happy that people are excited about hybrids, that they're buying the books and that they're enjoying them. And over time, that excitement and that enjoyment will generate more readers and more backers. So yeah, run your own race. Just stop worrying about everybody else. Yeah.
That's great, man. And I think that's a great place to close us out. Honestly, that was fantastic. One final time, Luke, tell us where we can find your work and give us a little taste of what's coming down the pike and what issues may drop in what month and all that jazz.
Sure. So first off, feel free to go over to Luke Stone Studios with an S on the end.com. You're going to be able to find all of my social media stuff there. You'll find my YouTube stuff. You'll find even some music that I've played with some friends. So you'll be able to hear old Luke play some guitar. So you'll be able to find kind of all that stuff. But you'll also find that Indiegogo, which is got the Killing Field Part 2. You'll be able to get Part 1 with that as well, the remaster and the quick play. You'll be able to get all of those things in that one campaign. And if you hurry, you can actually get a hand-painted action figure. So those are a little bit left. But what we got coming is in August, issue 1 is going to hit through Arrow Comics. It's going to be going right out to retailers. We'll be announcing the list of retailers closer towards the beginning of August. So middle of July, beginning of August, we'll be telling everyone where they can go get those. Anyone that has purchased the books already and then also goes to the retailer to buy one, we're going to do something special on the next campaign for them. where they can get something free or have a special perk for all of those that have done that. So a little extra thank you where I give you something free for that.
Awesome.
So we've got that, and then every month following issues 1, 2, 3, 4 will all go. The first 4 issues have been remastered, and so that's pretty exciting. But we also will be about a month after we fulfill, probably 3 to 4 weeks after we fulfill issue 7, we're going to be launching issue 8, and so issue 8 will be done by then. We're working that schedule. And so we will, about a month and a half, every month and a half, we will release a new campaign, ending in October with the Killing Field part 4. We are eventually going to do a trade paperback. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to launch that, because we will, by that time, we'll also have the 3 issues for the final arc called Lifeline done. So they will be finished and ready to go. It's just a matter of crowdfunding those the first of the year. So we're still trying to figure out how we plan on doing all that. And I want to be able to get that stuff out to the fans before those books hit retail. So it's all a matter of time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, that's great, and it looks like you guys are on top of it. That's so great as a reader of hybrids. That's encouraging, but just as a reader in general of indie comics, I think that's so important, and I just thank you for having a plan and for executing that plan as best to your ability. So Luke, thanks for being on the show, man. This was great. Loved having you on. We'll have to have you back on again soon.
Yeah, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you all for tuning in to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Also, hit that bell to get notified when we get a new episode dropped. So, as always, have fun, be safe, and go read a comic, for goodness sake. See you guys later. Yeah. Thanks.